Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We continue reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 17, text 23. Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho
Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho
Brahmanastri Vidha Smrita
Brahmanastri Vidha Smrtha
Brahmanastena Vedascha
Brahmanastena Vedascha
Yagyascha Vihita Pura.
Yagyascha Vihita Pura. Translation. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. It has been explained that penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories: the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But whether first class, second class, or third class, they are all conditioned, contaminated by the material modes of nature. When they are aimed at the Supreme Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal, they become means for spiritual elevation. In the scriptural injunctions, such an objective is indicated. These three words, Om Tat Sat, particularly indicate the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedic hymns, the word Om is always found. One who acts without following the regulations of the scriptures will not attain the absolute truth. He will get some temporary result, but not the ultimate end of life. The conclusion is that the performance of charity, sacrifice, and penance must be done in the mode of goodness. Performed in the mode of passion or ignorance, they are certainly inferior in quality. The three words Om Tat Sat are uttered in conjunction with the holy name of the Supreme Lord. Example Om Tat Vishnu. Whenever a Vedic hymn or the holy name of the Supreme Lord is uttered, Om is added. This is the indication of Vedic literature. These three words are taken from Vedic hymns. Om ite etat brahmano nedishtam nama indicates the first goal. Then tat tvam asi Chandogya Upanishad indicates the second goal. And Sat Eva Saumya, Chandogya Upanishad, indicates the third goal. Combined, they become Om Tat Sat. Formerly, when Brahma, the first created living entity, performed sacrifices, he indicated by these three words the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the same principle has always been followed by disciplic succession. So this time has great significance. Bhagavad Gita recommends that therefore that any work done should be done for Om Tat Sat or for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, he is acting in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities which enables one to return home, back to Godhead. There is no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way.
Krishna is speaking about Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat means referring to God. It comes in the Vedas. The Vedic hymns start with Om. It's meant for glorifying the Supreme Lord. It's whenever that's the reference is given, it is meant the reference is made to God. Here, Prabhupada is saying that charity, faith, foods, sacrifice, whatever we do, it is influenced by the three modes of nature. But when we are doing this charity, sacrifice, or eating, or any penance with the intention to glorify the Supreme Lord, then that these activities help us get out of the material world. When it is meant for satisfaction of God, pleasure of God, like penance, austerity, like we are recommended to fast on the 2 Ekadashis every month, or observe the Janmashtami, fasting on Janmashtami, like that, sacrifice, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Charity, giving charity to the devotees who are engaged busily in propagating Krishna consciousness. Food, offering food first to Krishna and then accepting it. So then these acts help us get out of the material world. That's that. Otherwise, they bind us. They will bind us here in the material world, because even if goodness, it is going to bind us. So, but when it is done for the pleasure of God, pleasure of Krishna, then it helps us get out of this material world, go back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada is saying there's no loss of energy in acting this way, because anything done in Krishna consciousness, anything done, any devotional service that is performed, the result is permanent. Wherever we have left off from, we begin in the next life. So that's why there's no loss of energy. The results are permanent. Tasmad Om Iti Udharitya.
तस्माद् ॐ इति उदाहृत्य
Yakya Dana Tapa Kriya.
यज्ञ दान तपक्रिया
Pravartante Vidhanokta.
प्रवर्तन्ते विधानोक्ता
Satatam Brahmavadinam.
सततं ब्रह्मवादिनाम्. Translation. Therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performances of sacrifice, charity, and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the Supreme. Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Rigveda. The lotus feet of Vishnu are the supreme devotional platform. The performance of everything on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead assure the perfection of all activity.
So Krishna is saying the transcendentalists, when they are doing some charity, penance, they are doing Om for the pleasure of God. Means they are undertaking such a performance for the pleasure of God. And Prabhupada is saying, when everything is done for the pleasure of God, then that is the perfection of any activity and all activity. Why are we doing this activity? What do we wish to gain out of that activity? When the intention is to please God, then that is the perfection of all activity. Why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of it? I just want to please God. It's my duty to please God. Then that is perfection. Tad iti anabhisandhaya.
Tad iti anabhisandhaya
Palam yagya tapa kriya.
phalam yakya tapa kriya
Dana kriyascha vivita.
dana kriyascha vividha
Kriyante moksha kankshibhihi.
kriyante mokshakankshibhi. Translation. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. Purport. To be elevated to the spiritual position, one should not act for any material gain. Acts should be performed for the ultimate gain of being transferred to the spiritual kingdom, back to home, back to Godhead.
Again, anything which we are doing, what is the purpose of doing it? Prabhupada is saying you should do it to, oh, this is going to help me get out of the material world. Help me go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah, Krishna is saying that any kinds of sacrifice, penance, charity with the word tat, get free of material entanglement. So we should act in such a way because we have to act. Actions we can't stop. But Krishna is saying act in such a way that is going to help you get out of the material world. Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha
Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha.
tad iti etad prayujyate
Sad iti etat prayujyate.
prashaste karmani tatha
Prashashte karmani tatha.
sachabda partha yujyate
Satchabda parthayujyate.
yagye tapasi dane cha
Yake tapasi dane cha.
sthiti sad iti chochyate.
Sthiti sad iti chochate.
Karma cheva tad arthiyam
Karma chaiva tad arthiyam.
sad iti eva vidhiyate.
Sad iti eva vidhiyate. Translation: the absolute truth is the objective of devotional service, and it is indicated by the word Sat. The performer of such sacrifice is called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O son of Pritha. Purport: the words prasaste karmani or prescribed duties indicate that there are many activities prescribed in the Vedic literature which are purificatory processes beginning from the time of conception up to the end of one's life. Such purificatory processes are adopted for the ultimate liberation of the living entity. In all such activities, it is recommended that one vibrate Om Tat Sat. The words Sadbhave and Sadhubhave indicate the transcendental situation. Acting in Krishna consciousness is called Sattva, and one who is fully conscious of the activities of Krishna consciousness is called a sadhu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that the transcendental subject matter becomes clear in the association of the devotees. The words used are Satam Prasangat. Without good association, one cannot achieve transcendental knowledge. When initiating a person or offering the sacred thread, one vibrates the words Om Tat Sat. Similarly, in all kinds of performance of yajna, the object is the supreme Om Tat Sat. The word Tat Arthiyam further means offering service to anything which represents the supreme, including such service as cooking and helping in the Lord's temple, or any other kind of work for broadcasting the glories of the Lord. These supreme words, Om Tat Sat, are thus used in many ways to perfect all activities and make everything complete.
So here Prabhupada is helping us understand that prescribed duties, the as even while conception actually, the child is to be conceived by doing the Garbhan Samskar, where the husband and the wife, before they come together, they chant a prescribed number of rounds. So these purificatory processes are there. Then as soon as the child is born, then there is the name giving ceremony, then there will be the food, tasting the first food grains, or even piercing the ears, like this. There's purificatory processes. These samskars are there. Different processes are prescribed in the life of a human being. And what? For the ultimate liberation. Ultimate to liberate from this material world. There is no difference. Vibrate Om Tat Sat or Hare Krishna. Om Tat Sat is used to indicate God. Hare Krishna is also God's names. So it's non-different, it's the same. So, and how do we understand the matters relating to God in the association of devotees? When we associate with devotees, we can get transcendental knowledge, can begin to understand God. Without good association, without the association of devotees, we are unable to understand it. So all kinds of yajna, all kinds of sacrifice is meant for satisfaction of God. Krishna says that work done as a sacrifice for the pleasure of Lord, work should be done as a sacrifice for pleasure of Lord Vishnu, he says in the 3rd chapter. Otherwise, work becomes binding. So any work, any endeavor which is taken should be done as an offering to God for the pleasure of God. Ashraddhaya hutam datam
Ashraddhaya hutam tatam
tapastaptam kritam chaya
tapastaptam kritam chayat
asad iti uchyate partha
asad iti uchyate partha
nacha tat pretya no iha.
न च तत् प्रत्यनो ह्यः. Translation: anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pratha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. Purport: anything done without the transcendental objective, whether it be sacrifice, charity, or penance, is useless. Therefore, in this verse, it is declared that such activities are abominable. Everything should be done for the Supreme in Krishna consciousness. Without such faith and without the proper guidance, there can never be any fruit. In all the Vedic scriptures, faith in the Supreme is advised. In the pursuit of all Vedic instructions, the ultimate goal is the understanding of Krishna. No one can obtain success without following this principle. Therefore, the best course is to work from the very beginning in Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. That is the way to make everything successful. In the conditional state, people are attracted to worshipping demigods, ghosts, or yakshas like Kuvera. The mode of goodness is better than the mode of passion and ignorance. But one who takes directly to Krishna consciousness is transcendental through all three modes of material nature. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, if one by the association of pure devotees takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way and that is recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Then one can achieve faith in the Supreme. When that faith matures in course of time, it is called love of God. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. One should therefore take to Krishna consciousness directly. That is the message of the 17th chapter. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the divisions of faith.
So here Prabhupada is helping us understand. Here Krishna is saying that sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in God is impermanent. So when we are doing any sacrifice, charity, or penance in the modes of nature, the result of that is impermanent. But when it is done for the pleasure of God, then it helps us get out of this material world. When it is done with faith. So gradual elevation is there. One can gradually elevate from the mode of ignorance, come to the mode of passion, then come to the mode of goodness. But Prabhupada is pointing out, take directly to Krishna consciousness and get training. Get training under a proper spiritual master. And then one can, because initially one has a little slight faith. With that slight faith, one meets the devotees, he associates with the devotees. Then in the association of devotees, he engages in devotional service. Then by engaging in devotional service, all the unwanted things in the heart goes away. This brings us to the platform of firm faith. Then one continues hearing and chanting in the association of devotees. Then one gets a taste for hearing and chanting. One gets attached to hearing, chanting. One gets emotion for God. And finally, the perfection, love of God. So that's why Prabhupada is saying faith matures in course of time, and it is called love of God. So it begins with little faith. Slight faith is there. Then we need to associate with the devotees, because the devotees will engage us in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service. That will help revive this love of God that each of us have in our heart. So it can be taken up directly, Krishna consciousness. You just need to associate with the devotees, hear and chant in the association of devotees, and we can get this ultimate benefit. So that brings us to the end of the 17th chapter. And chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Did you have any question? Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna Uvacha
Sanyasyasya Mahabaho
Sanyasya Sanyasyasya Mahabaho
Tattvam Ichhami Veditum
Yat Tattvama Ichhami Veditam
Yagasya Cha Rishikesha
Tyagasya Cha Rishikesha
Prithakeshi Nishudana.
Pratikesi Nisudana. Translation. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, Tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, Sannyasa. O killer of the Kesi demon, master of the senses. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita is finished in 17 chapters. The 18th chapter is a supplementary summarization of the topics discussed before. In every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna stresses that devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. This same point is summarized in the 18th chapter as the most confidential path of knowledge. In the first 6 chapters, stress was given to devotional service. Yoginam api sarvesham. Of all yogis or transcendentalists, one who always thinks of me within himself is best. In the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activity were discussed. In the third 6 chapters, knowledge, renunciation, the activities of material nature and transcendental nature, and devotional service were described. It was concluded that all acts should be performed in conjunction with the Supreme Lord, represented by the words Om Tat Sat, which indicate Vishnu, the Supreme Person. The third part of Bhagavad Gita has shown that devotional service and nothing else is the ultimate purpose of life. This has been established by citing past acharyas and the Brahma Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra, Certain impersonalists consider themselves to have a monopoly on the knowledge of Vedanta Sutra, but actually, the Vedanta Sutra is meant for understanding devotional service of the Lord, for the Lord Himself is the composer of the Vedanta Sutra, and He is its knower. That is described in the 15th chapter. In every scripture, every Veda, devotional service is the objective. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. As in the second chapter, a synopsis of the whole subject matter was described. In the 18th chapter, also, the summary of all instruction is given. The purpose of life is indicated to be renunciation and attainment of the transcendental position above the three material modes of nature. Arjuna wants to clarify the two distinct subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, namely renunciation, tyag, and the renounced order of life, sannyasa. Thus, he is asking the meaning of these two words used in this verse to address the Supreme Lord, Rishikesha and Keshi Nishudana, are significant. Rishikesha is Krishna, the master of all senses, who can always help us attain mental serenity. Arjuna requests him to summarize everything in such a way that he can remain equipoised. Yet he has some doubts, and doubts are always compared to demons. He therefore addresses Krishna as Keshi Nishudana. Keshi was the most formidable demon who was killed by the Lord. Now Arjuna is expecting Krishna to kill the demon of doubt.
Arjuna, now he wants to understand what is renunciation and what is sannyas. And Arjuna is referring to Krishna as Rishikesh. Rishikesh is a name for Krishna to indicate master of the senses. Krishna is the master of everyone's senses and killer of Keshi demon. Krishna had killed the demon Keshi. So here Arjuna wants to wants Krishna to also, by answering his question, kill the doubts that are like demons. So Prabhupada is explaining that 18th chapter is also a summary. It's like a summary of what Krishna has spoken. At the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna hints about devotional service. He says the highest yogi, yoginam api sarvesham, madgatenantaratmana, that who is the best of the yogis? Krishna says is the one who is engaged in devotional service. He's the best yogi. And then, of course, 7 to 12, these chapters are mainly concerned with bhakti yoga, devotional service, where the position of God is explained, the position of living entity, and the material world, and devotional service. So everything, when it's done for the pleasure of God, becomes purifying for us, helps us to get out of the material world. Otherwise, work becomes binding. So devotional service is the purpose of life. Devotional service begins by hearing and chanting, hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna says, whatever you do, Arjuna, do it for me. Whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you give away, you do it for me. So acting for the pleasure of God. Then speaking of Vedanta Sutra, Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, he compiled the Vedanta Sutra. And the purpose of Vedanta Sutra is to engage us in devotional service, to tell us that devotional service is the process by which we can revive our loving relationship to God. Why is Krishna giving us this information of devotional service? Because we, each of us, have love for Krishna, love of God in our heart. And this love can be revived when we engage in devotional service. Each of us have a loving, intimate relationship with God. And this this relationship can be revived when we engage in devotional service, when we are hearing and chanting, hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
श्रीभगवान् उवाच
Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam
काम्यानं कर्मणां न्यषम्
Sanyasam Kavayo Vidu
सन्न्यासं कावयो विदु
Sarva Karma Phalatyagam
सर्वकर्म फलत्यागं
Ahustyagam Vichakshana.
प्राहुस्त्यागं विचक्षण. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyasa, and giving up the results of all activities is what the wise call renunciation, tyaga. Purport. The performance of activities for results has to be given up. This is the instruction of Bhagavad Gita. But activities leading to advanced spiritual knowledge are not to be given up. This will be made clear in the next verses. In the Vedic literature, there are many prescriptions of methods for performing sacrifice for some particular purpose. There are certain sacrifices to perform to attain a good son or to attain elevation to the higher planets, but sacrifices prompted by desire should be stopped. However, sacrifice for the purification of one's heart or for advancement in the spiritual science should not be given up.
Krishna is explaining what is sannyas. Sannyas means to give up activities of material desire. We act in certain way because we want to enjoy in a certain way. We want to get something material out of it. So when one gives that up, that's called sannyas. And tyag is the renouncing the result of the activities. That one may act in a material way, but the result of the activity is giving up to God. So that's why it's called renunciation. That acting for the pleasure of God. Oh, I will engage in this activity for the pleasure of God. So Prabhupada is helping us understand that activities which help us to, to get more and more spiritual knowledge, to purify our heart more and more, those activities should not be given up. The activities for material desires, those should be given up for results. Performance of activities for results has to be given up. So we have to understand it's the intention by which the activity has to be performed. Because we cannot stop acting. Nobody can just sit down and do nothing. The soul is active. But now what intention we are acting with is I'm going to do this so that I can enjoy. And that keeps us more and more in the material world. But if we can say, I'm going to do this because it's going to help me come closer to God, by this activity, I am pleasing God, then those activities should not be stopped. And in fact, they should be increased gradually, because those activities purify our heart. So hearing and chanting should never be stopped, should be done regularly. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Constantly, regularly. त्याज्यं दोषवद् इति एके
त्याज्यं दोषवत् इति एके
कर्म प्राहुर्मनाशिनः. I'm sorry,
कर्म
Manishin.
प्राहुर् कर्म
Manishina.
प्राहुर्मनीषिणः
Yajna dana tapa karma.
यज्ञदानतपकर्म
Na त्याज्यम इति चापरे.
न त्याज्यम् इति चापरे. Translation. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty, yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. Purport. There are many activities in the Vedic literature which are subjects of contention. For instance, it is said that an animal can be killed in a sacrifice, yet some maintain that animal killing is completely abominable. Although animal killing in a sacrifice is recommended in the Vedic literature, the animal is not considered to be killed. The sacrifice is to give a new life to the animal. Sometimes the animal is given a new animal life after being killed in the sacrifice, and sometimes the animal is promoted immediately to the human form of life. But there are different opinions among the sages. Some say that animal killing should always be avoided, and others say that for a specific sacrifice it is good. All these different opinions on sacrificial activity are now being clarified by the Lord Himself.
And Krishna is saying some say that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should be given. Some say no, they shouldn't be given. So Krishna is gonna explain what is to be done. Prabhupada is here explaining about sacrifice, animal killing. Vedas, they have this section of Vedas which recommends killing of animals in sacrifice. So some say no, 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 it shouldn't be done. But we have to understand the purpose, why this animal sacrifice is recommended, and what happens to the animal when it is sacrificed. The Brahmanas were so powerful that when the animal was sacrificed, the Brahmana, by the power of the mantra, could give this animal a new animal body, or no more going through so much evolution, but immediately getting a human body. In the normal course of activities, normal course of evolution, otherwise to get from human animal to human being, there's so many species of life one has to go through. But when the animal was killed in the sacrifice, he could immediately get a new human body. Sometimes he was given a human body immediately, or sometimes it would be given a newer animal body. So, like an old animal is being sacrificed and he gets rejuvenated, he becomes younger. So, certainly there is no loss for the animal in either case. But in this age of Kali, animal sacrifice are strictly abandoned. They're completely, uh, they're completely prohibited, rather. They are prohibited. The scriptures tell us that in the age of Kali, we are we are not supposed to engage in animal sacrifices because we do not have the qualified brahmanas to be able to chant the mantras that will give the animal a new life, will be able to rejuvenate the animal. That's why we are strictly prohibited from engaging in animal sacrifice. And the only sacrifice mentioned for this age of Kali is chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, chanting the holy names of God. Kali Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan. Nischayam Shinu Me Tatra.
निश्चयं शृणु मे तत्र
Yage Bharata Sattama.
त्यागे भरतसत्तमा
Tyago hi Purusha Vyagra.
त्यागो हि पुरुष व्याघ्र
Trividasam prakirtita.
Trivida Samprakirita. Translation. O best of the Bharatas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. Purport. Although there are differences of opinion about renunciation, here the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, gives his judgment, which should be taken as final. After all, the Vedas are different laws given by the Lord. Here, the Lord is personally present, and his word should be taken as final. The Lord says that the process of renunciation should be considered in terms of the modes of material nature in which it is performed.
So Krishna is saying that renunciation is also could be in the modes. He's going to explain to us about renouncing in the modes. And Prabhupada is pointing out that Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's word is final, is the word of God, is the song of God. Vedas, they are the words of God. The Bhagavad Gita, why does it have any value? Because it's spoken by God Himself. God is the final, the supreme authority. And so we should take His word as final and follow His instructions. Yajna dana tapa karma
Yakyadana tapa karma
na tyajyam karyam evatat
natyajam karyam evatat
yajyo danam tapaschaiva
yakyodanam tapaschaiva
pavanani manishinam.
pavanani manishinam. Translation. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. Purport. The yogi should perform acts for the advancement of human society. There are many purificatory processes for advancing a human being to spiritual life. The marriage ceremony, for example, is considered to be one of these sacrifices. It is called Vivaha Yajna. Should, should a sannyasi who is in the renounced order of life and who has given up his family relations encourage the marriage ceremony, the Lord says here that any sacrifice which is meant for a human welfare should never be given up. Vivaha Yajna, the marriage ceremony, is meant to regulate the human mind so that it may become peaceful for spiritual advancement. For most men, the Vivaha Yajna should be encouraged even by persons in the renounced order of life. Sannyasis should never associate with women, but that does not mean that one who is in the lower stages of life, a young man, should not accept a wife in a marriage ceremony. All prescribed sacrifices are meant for achieving the Supreme Lord. Therefore, in the lower stages, they should not be given up. Similarly, charity is for the purification of the heart. If charity is given to suitable persons as described previously, it leads one to advance spiritual life.
Oh, Krishna is saying that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should not be given up. They should be performed. They're never to be given up. Even if, even the for a sannyasi, they should not be given up. Even the devotees should not give up these activities. They purify even the great souls, it's written. So Prabhupada is raising a question that marriage ceremony is one of the sacrifice. So should a sannyasi encourage marriage ceremony? Because sannyasi means he has nothing to do with the world. But yes, he should encourage it. Why? Because the marriage ceremony helps one to function properly in society, be peaceful, so that one can engage their energy in devotional service. Here Prabhupada is saying is meant to regulate the human mind so that it may become peaceful for spiritual advancement. That is the aim of marriage. Meant to regulate the human mind. Why? So it can become peaceful for what? For spiritual advancement. So we can see that the goal is spiritual advancement. And if something is helping with that, then it should be done. Spiritual advancement. All the sacrifices are meant for achieving God. Any act which is done should be done for the pleasure of God to help us revive our love of God. So charity is purifying, it purifies the heart, so it should not be given up. The highest charity that we can give is the charity of the holy name. Giving the charity of the holy name to others, encouraging others to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, so that they can also get out of this material world. They can also begin the process of devotional service. Etani apitu karmani
एतानि अपि तु कर्माणि
sangam tyaktva falani cha
सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलानि च
kartavyani me partha
कर्तव्यानीति मे पार्थ
nishchitam matam uttamam.
निश्चितं मतम् उत्तमम्. Translation: all these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectations of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Pritha. That is my final opinion. Purport: although all sacrifices are purifying, one should not expect any result by such performances. In other words, all sacrifices which are meant for material advancement in life should be given up, but sacrifices that purify one's existence and elevate one to the spiritual plane should not be stopped. Everything that leads to Krishna consciousness must be encouraged. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also it is said that any activity which leads to devotional service to the Lord should be accepted. That is the highest criterion of religion. A devotee of the Lord should accept any kind of work, sacrifice, or charity which will help him in the discharge of devotional service to the Lord.
So Krishna is saying all acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should be performed without attachment or expectation of result, but they should be performed as a matter of duty. Duty for the pleasure of God. It's our duty to please God. He's providing everything to us. He'll continue to provide, but we have a relationship with God, and it's our duty to act in that relationship. So Prabhupada is helping us understand that there are many sacrifices which are meant for material advancement. So gradually, those should be given up, not abruptly, because it's a gradual process. And gradually, the sacrifices which help us advance in spiritual life, they should be increased. Activities of devotional service should be increased. Hearing and chanting, worshipping the deity, those should be increased, they should be encouraged. Bhagavatam also says that any activity which leads one to engage in devotional service to the Lord should be accepted. So doing anything which is favorable for Krishna consciousness and refraining from doing anything that will lead us away from Krishna consciousness. Because the principle is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So the activities which help us remember Krishna should be performed more and more. And the activities which help us to forget Krishna, they should be stopped. Niyatasya tu sannyasa
Niyatasya tu sannyasa
karmano nopapadyate
karmano nopapadyate
mohatasya parityagas
mohatasya parityagas
tamasa parikirtita.
tamasha parikirtita. Translation. Prescribed duties should never be renounced. If one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Purport. Work for material satisfaction must be given up, but activities which promote one to spiritual activity, like cooking for the Supreme Lord and offering the food to the Lord, and then accepting the food, are recommended. It is said that a person in the renounced order of life should not cook for himself. Cooking for oneself is prohibited, but cooking for the Supreme Lord is not prohibited. Similarly, a sannyasi may perform a marriage ceremony to help his disciple in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. If one renounces such activities, it is to be understood that he is acting in the mode of darkness.
Duties should not be given up because of illusion. Krishna is saying, don't renounce the duties. Otherwise, if one is renouncing the duties because of illusion, then one is acting in the mode of ignorance. So work for material satisfaction must be given up, but activities which promote one to spiritual activity, like cooking for Supreme Lord and offering the food to the Lord, and then accepting the food, are recommended. So any work, again, the intention that why am I doing this activity? Let me do it to please God. Those activities need to be performed. All the activities for the pleasure of God, those should be performed. Then Prabhupada is pointing out that the sannyasi is meant not to cook. But if he's sannyasi, says, I'm not supposed to cook. But the higher principle is cooking for God. That's a higher principle. So cooking for the Lord, offering it to the Lord, and then accepting it as prasad. But if he says, no, sannyasi is not supposed to cook, then he's renouncing out of ignorance. Whereas the higher instruction given to us is do everything for the pleasure of God. Similarly, marriage ceremony, sannyasi may say, no, I cannot. It's against the sannyas regulations to perform marriage ceremony. But if it is for a person to advance in Krishna consciousness, it helps his disciple to advance in Krishna consciousness, then that is the higher principle. So not renouncing the activities without proper knowledge. One needs to understand what is actually the higher principle. And doing the activities for the pleasure of God and engaging others in service to God, helping others in the activities which will help them also to serve God. That is the higher principle. We'll stop here for today. Thank you so much for listening and joining in. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare